with you and your group. Um, it's always fun to join new communities. So I am Steve Tendon. I'm based in Malta, in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, and Mediterranean means in the middle of the world. So I guess I must be in the middle of the universe. Um, I say that I accelerate business performance in knowledge work without compromising sustainability, quality, or humanity through patterns, mental models, and emerging technologies. It's quite a mouthpiece. And you see my contact details there if you want to reach out to me. And I am the managing director of TameFlow Consulting. Now, I have some things to tell you about Agile, and so that was the title of the Agile Heresy Manifesto. But allow me just 2 words on what's the story of TameFlow, because it's not well known, even though it has a story, an interesting one as well. TameFlow got its name like officially around 2013-14, but my personal let's say interest in methodologies goes back to the early 90s. As you might know, the Scrum framework, process, method, it has many names. Nowadays, it's known as a framework. But in 1995, the first paper was called Scrum Development Process by Ken Schwaber. In those years, in the previous years, there was another paper that vastly influenced Scrum. It was the Borland Software Craftsmanship paper by Jim Coplin. Maybe you know the story. Jim worked for AT&T, and he did lots of in-depth studies of software companies, trying to figure out what makes one company, let's say, more productive than another one. And he studied Borland, and Borland was like an outlier in all possible dimensions. And this paper was so influential on Jeff Sutherland that the stand-up meeting, the product owner role and the Scrum Master role came directly from that document. But what is the connection? Well, I was myself involved in Borland between 1987 and 1992. So I was part of that pioneering organization that stood out for performance in software engineering. Coplin had a very interesting approach because he studied companies not so much as a methodologist, but more like an anthropologist, someone who was looking into the social sciences, and eventually he documented his findings in a pattern form. And that was like my first interest in how to reason around methodologies. And of course, I was very motivated because I could recognize in Coplin's work the things that I had experienced in Borland. So patterns became the foundation of all things I have been doing ever since, even though nowadays TameFlow maybe is mostly known as the approach that brings together Kanban and the theory of constraints. But maybe we'll get to that after my presentation. So this was just to tell you that TameFlow does not come out of the blue. It's been around, at least operationally, with myself and my colleagues since the mid 90s. And now I'd like to start the actual show here. And by all means, if you have any questions, just pop in and ask. So the title is this Agile Heresy Manifesto, and I have verbalized it. So allow me to read this to you. Let's see what kind of reaction this provokes. We have come here to bury Agile, not to praise it. We are uncovering better ways of managing knowledge work by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value sheer individualistic, egotistical selfishness that exploits the power of the ego over servant leadership, rational and scientific patterns and mental models over feel-good values and principles, real bottom-line results over proclaimed customer value focus, scale-free solutions over Don Quixote's lost battles of scaling the windmills. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. By thinking outside of the box, we create high-performance, humane, and sustainable cultures unlike any other. So, Miriam, what kind of reaction do you feel after listening to this proclamation of an heresy?
It's imposing, I guess. It's I don't know. I feel a little overwhelmed with the declarations here.
Yeah, gonna need to see proof.
Steve, is
what was that? Sorry.
Creation?
Yes, I'm the author of this heresy, so I'm officially a heretical. All right. So I was wondering now, what these statements, what kind of feeling would they stir? Because obviously the first thing is that we have a divide here. There is like a right side and a left side. That's what we are even writing at the bottom. And maybe some felt a tone of derogation, maybe even some contempt. Maybe some got angry. Maybe some think this is offensive. And then maybe you close the ranks and you feel that well, those on the right side, they belong together. So you have this feeling of identity. And then towards me, the author of this, what are you feeling? Maybe your opinions will be biased. Maybe there is a priming. Say, no, this guy is a bit crazy. Let's not give him too much credit. So I want you to reflect on your feelings now. How are you feeling about this? You are all, I presume, Agile practitioners. You probably have been doing Agile for a long, long time. And reading this kind of statements is certainly not pleasant. So, I did this quite on purpose. I don't like manifestos, even though I will try to argue that this manifesto is valid. But I like them, and this dislike started some time ago when the chicken and pig fable was part of the Scrum Guide. I presume you all know it. In any case, you have the cartoon there to remind you what it was about. This fable has been criticized many, many times. Eventually, it got pulled out of the Scrum Guide, also because maybe after some time...
Just a second. I don't know if it's you or if it's on my end, but you're breaking up a little bit. It is. Yes.
You're breaking up?
You're breaking up. Your audio is choppy a little bit.
Yes, I heard that too.
Okay.
Maybe even trying. Somebody suggested.
Is this better?
So it's the network.
Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There's still a little bit of noise, and try turning off your video. It's not yet. Turn the videos.
Okay.
Is it
My
everybody
video's
turning
off.
the videos off, or just?
Yeah, why don't we all take our videos off? We'll take a little less.
Okay. All right. Let's try that.
Okay, let's see if it works. Hope it works. So this fable, after a certain while, also became like politically not so correct. I heard the story that
It's still
in some places there were.
Yeah, Steve is
Do
still.
you hear me?
Yeah, it's still a little staticky.
Maybe Steve, if you log out and log back in, might that be worth trying?
Wait, how is it now?
It's still
Is this
seems
better?
Yeah, say some more.
So shall I just go out and back in?
Maybe try that and see if that works. And there's a little bit of that code.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
All right. Back to.
Give that a try. Yeah, it could be headset too. I'm not sure. It didn't look like he was wearing anything, but
Yeah, it sounded like the line was bad.
Yeah, that's what happens when you live in Malta, probably.
Yeah, is it Malta?
Yeah, well, it's just a little island.
I thought you were just giving him the guillotine very politely. I thought that was about
Break it up.
Oh, look, your neck's full enough.
We don't want to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Here he was trying to stir us up.
All right.
Just to say hi. This is Minson Brooks, and I work with Steve. I live in Perth Amboy.
You hear me better now?
Keep talking. Let's see. I
Keep
think
talking.
it is better. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll reshare.
That's much better.
Yeah.
Okay. Good suggestion, Minton. Thank you.
Yep.
So I will reshare the screen. Are you seeing my screen again?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't quite remember where I was, but anyway, the cartoon, you are, I presume you're familiar with it, and eventually it got taken out of the Scrum guide and the Scrum documentation. But this sort of bias still remained as a cultural thing. Even just recently, this other categorization of characters in companies came out. And while there might be some truth in the behavioral traits of some people, it's still a very divisive thing, because you're basically cutting the company in good ones and bad ones. And even more recently, in an article on Forbes by Dennis Stevens, we had this table. I don't know what the actual source is, but again, we have like a good side and a bad side. So we are in a situation where there is bad behavior or bad people being exposed, and that is certainly not something that creates a good environment. Now, just imagine in the case of Agile. Now, ask yourself that question: the feelings that you had when I read the Agile Heresy, who could have had similar reactions to the various messages that Agile has proposed. It's not coincidental that Agile has gained like a reputation of being anti-management. And as Agile has been so successful that eventually it reached out of the scope of a single team and went to affect the companies as a whole, well, that Agile, let's say, reputation of being anti-management did not really help. Actually, the author of the cartoon of the chicken and pigs also suggested a sort of way out. So we need to try to figure out how all parties are sharing the same destiny, wings and ribs, and then all will be like committed. But can we make this happen? I claim that Agile cannot make it happen. There are several reasons for that. So I will instead show now how I do it, or try to do it with TameFlow, and show you some significant differences between TameFlow and Agile. So let's look at another very recent cartoon. This one, I think it came up just a few days ago by the workchronicles.com. Now check them out. They are really funny. It's like Dilberesque in many ways. But this cartoon captures what is a very common pattern in organizations where we have like KPIs and metrics, and when things go well, it's all our own merit, and when things go bad, there is always some external factor. Now, what we want to do is, of course, to keep this positive side that we are responsible for positive results. But what's more, we want to create a situation where the external factors actually change that curve, and in that way we might become happier even with respect to the managers, so to say. This simple notion of working on the external factors to create a shared like destiny is what TameFlow is in a nutshell. And how that is done, well, that is a long story, but I will try to outline how we can make this happen. So let's first have a quick look at management approaches. Typically, they look at the needs of the organization. Now, TameFlow really deals with organizational performance, so I should have like a similar stance, but I don't. And then we have most agile approaches, which start with the teams, and they look at the needs of the teams. They are very successful with teams, but they then they have this problem of scaling up. That's is a bit the challenge Agile is having in this period. But then we have TameFlow, and what is TameFlow about? It's about you. We try to cater for the needs of individuals. We are very concerned about the, let's say, getting all people at all levels in the organization to be happy and satisfied of what is going on. So TameFlow is, in a way, a license to be selfish, because you need to take care of yourself if you want to thrive in a company. But how can we reason about this in some good way? By the way, if you have any questions or comments, no, please do interrupt and intervene. Otherwise, I might just be boring too much. So
Steve,
what
I do have a comment here in a sense, you know, from an organization, needs of organizations, needs of a team, needs for yourself. What I'm seeing, and you could, you know, point to team and organization as being, for instance, a lot of times just too generic. Like, you know, needs of one organization is different. Even needs within that organization could be different for different people, right? Where at this, at the at the need of yourself, each individual kind of understand, or hopefully understands, or is a little bit aware of their needs, right? And one of the biggest challenges, at least that I'm seeing in some of the conversations that we've had, is that there's no single best way to do things. And if we could listen to what people want and what the environment dictates, then we could design solutions that align with the different needs, rather than just, even going back to the Agile Manifesto, this over that, right? It makes an assumption of that binary thing, that there are two extremes, but there's nothing in between. And most of it is in between those two extremes. So that's my observation or thought.
Yeah, that's good. Good point. That even this categorization is with very broad strokes, because needs of the organization, of the team, and of yourself. Of course, in reality, there are shades of gray in between all of this. But if you look at like the main characteristics of say something like lean, even if lean has the very important precept of respect for people, and a real lean implementation is really people focused. But if you look out there how lean is implemented, it's mostly from a pure corporate perspective, and the value of focusing on people is almost forgotten. Likewise, most agile initiatives, they typically start from the team. The team is like the center of all attention, and then yes, within the team you start, especially during these last few years, you start making space for like psychological safety and individual needs. But the focus point is the team. Now, for me, the focus point is the individual. That's where I start from. And I mentioned patterns before, and one point that is absolutely critical for me is one pattern, which is the unity of purpose pattern, which is really at the core of all what I do. The unity of purpose pattern, though, is very, very difficult to achieve in practice. And this we'll see now how the reasoning is to get some what shall we call them, support and crutches to start going in that direction. The point here is that we all have two fundamental needs, and one is the need for time. Time is critical. We all prefer to spend time at home rather than at work, even though in these COVID times, maybe we even long to go back to work for other reasons. But in general, you know what I mean. It's the choice of how employing time is a very personal thing. But in general, you have deeper interests in life than being at work. And you might have deeper problems, like with family, children, elderly, and so on and so forth. Which also brings about the other point that money is an extremely important factor. Now, money is also a very controversial because we have ample evidence that too much focus on profits is not leading to anywhere good. But at least we can agree that money is absolutely necessary for fundamental needs. So you need to have minimum income or compensation for your work. And here I like to represent this with basically a very simple diagram. It's the money versus time diagram. Now, if we look at how our lives might progress on this diagram, what happens? As kids, we maybe have some pocket money, and then as we grow, now all of a sudden we have something like that. Oh, we started dating, so we need some more money to be able to sustain that new lifestyle, and then this goes on, and oh, maybe we get married, and we need to buy a house, and then we get kids, and then what else, and then something like that happens because we divorce, or maybe we are to sustain this we become criminals and we need lawyers, and in either case you must pay the lawyer, so the amount of money is exponential at that point. I'm sure you recognize the pattern. As time progresses, you need more money just to live a normal life, and that's where the very simplistic view is that we can imagine that we have like a line across here that represents on average how this compensation over time should progress, and anything that is like above the line is positive, is more money over less time. I spend less time at work and earn more is certainly better than if I have overtime, and for that overtime I am not compensated enough. So we have this. Hold on a second. I'm having a problem with the Miro board. I love Miro, but sometimes it freezes on my selections. So that's the other part. Now, if you have to work overtime and our salaries are reduced, we're not happy. I think that can be something we definitely agree on. Or do you concur, Millian? Is that okay? Do you think the majority of people would agree with this?
I think so. Yeah, generally speaking, yeah. And I think that's one thing about the patterns, right? It's not necessarily that it's right or wrong. It's a pattern. And a lot of times people think of patterns as that the patterns are correct. Because, as you were talking about, that you spend more money as you grow older, as the family gets bigger. That's true. But it's also, in some instances, there's, obviously another pattern where if you follow that and you realize that, it's not about the money, it might be going in a different pattern, not necessarily downwards, but in a different pattern where you don't feel like you need money to be happy or to have more kids or something like that. So it definitely resonates with me in the sense of pattern language and just looking at the patterns and looking at them as they are, not as necessarily in that extreme that you were talking about earlier too, about the duality. There's one or the other extreme of the. So,
okay, now it's very interesting that you're highlighting. Very interesting that you're highlighting that for some people, for personal values, they might make opposite choices. But keep that thought for a moment, because we'll see, you know, what some consequences might be here. So let's take this this diagram again. Hold on a second. I bring it in there again, and let's suppose that that we are progressing on that line, and at a certain point of time, we need to make a decision. It's a decision on professional decision. It's something you do at work for work. So this is when you're inside the organization, and you make it in one way, and you might see an increase, and you make it in another way, and you see a decrease of that slope. So clearly, here we have a cause-effect situation. Depending on your decision, I highlight it's your decision. It's not a decision that is imposed by management, by the team, by a process, by a methodology. It's your personal decision at work. You can provoke that slope to change in one direction or the other. Now, if we assume, and you just mentioned that it's not always the case, that people would mostly prefer like the green line over the red line, well, here you start to see one of the elements that I highlighted, that we are trying to figure out what are the fundamental drivers at the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Typically, it will be on the green line. Yes, there are exceptions, and they need to be considered as well. And I stress again the point that you made the decision. It's not in any way an imposition from someone else. So good so far, Million. So let's develop this this scenario a bit further. Now I was speaking about an individual who made like a decision on their own, but let's consider here another scenario where we have me and you. Remember, we are working in a company. We are having our own progression on career progression and compensation progression. And at a certain point in time, I have to make a decision. Same scenario as before. And if we take that assumption, I will decide for the green line. Why? Because it is in my best self-interest. Now, it just so happens that you are in another business unit, in another team, in some other branch of the company where there are different KPIs and different priorities, probably different budgets. And it's through those budgets that we already have a dividing line between my side and your side. And it just so happens that my decision will influence your line. And it will have the opposite effect. So I will enjoy higher compensation for less time at work, and the impact for you is the opposite. You'll have to work overtime and earn less. Could be a classical example that maybe, I don't know,
I mean,
tests are
yeah. Or something that I look at this, like for instance, the way the policies, compensation policies, right? You know, a manager could, you know, be more incentivized to, you know, where you amplify the manager, me, right? Where the worker, you, gets the less. And that could be just based on the compensation policy. So at least that's what's making me think about, like, you know, just the implication of policies, and we design policies and processes in a company, how they interplay. And I'm sure, you know, whoever designed those policies is not thinking about it in this way.
Well, you're getting quite close to where I want to arrive at.
And please, anybody else that wants to chime in, Steve said, you know, we wanted to make this more of a conversation, but for anybody else that has thoughts, comments, or questions, please jump in. We definitely don't want it to be just Steve and I. So if you have questions,
yeah,
say, hey, I have.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that was what was going through my head as you were kind of going through this.
So we mentioned patterns, and the other part of this, which is central to TameFlow, is mental models. Now, in this decision that was taken, the person that took the decision, me in this case, made that decision on the basis of some criteria that are probably derived from my understanding of the world, and therefore from mental models that are driving my understanding and decision making. So what we do in TameFlow is that we work with these mental models and we enhance them plus in such way that when I take this kind of decision, we are ensuring that the positive effect is felt even by you. Even if you were not part of the decision, even if the cause and effect chain that would bring you to the negative red line in the first place is maybe so long a chain that you would not even try to visualize it or to understand it. But it's
so,
through
Steve,
these mental models.
If I may interrupt, I'm not sure if everybody's familiar what mental model is, and I'll paste a link. I don't know if you've seen it, Steve. It's from Darius Cabrera's. At least that's where it's 1 minute video. It's very funny video on what mental model is. So maybe we can have people just watch it for 1 minute. I just pasted that, and maybe after that, if you could just clarify what you mean by mental model, and then we can continue. So if you could just click on a video link, YouTube link, and then watch it. It's just 1 minute video. It'll probably make you laugh, and then we'll come back.
So let's maybe take a look at the video. I'm not familiar with this one. Right. So mental models, well, that video was a bit funny, but it shows clearly what it is about. You are observing. Now, both I and you are observing the same reality. Mm-hmm. The reality is what it is, but we might interpret it in completely different ways, and based on that interpretation, we will make different decisions, and sometimes such decisions are lethal. So no, it's good to have good mental models. Now, another point here is that a model is a model. It's not reality. So it's an approximation of reality, and when you start working with mental models, you have this notion, or you need to be prepared to evolve those mental models. That's why I wrote that plus plus on the slide there. Mental models can change, and oftentimes you gain a new insight, a new perspective, you make a new reflection, and you improve your mental model. The consequence is that your interpretation of reality becomes better, and your decision making also improves. So at this point, let's take this reasoning one step further. And let's assume that we have a similar situation, or rather we have the same players. It's me on the one side, and you on the other side. And we are like, again, we are in different business units. So we have our own budgets, and we are foreseeing that green line for us. We are again in the same point of time. We have to make a proposal. Suppose it's now proposing something for the next year. So it's the budgeting process. We need to get money, so we make proposals. And up here we have another one of these lines, but this line is the line of the supreme boss of this organization, the ultimate decision maker, and he will listen to the two proposals. And we are still in the old logic, so we have not evolved our mental models. And he will look at me and consider what I'm saying, look at you and consider what you're saying. And it just so happens that with the decision being suggested by me, the boss's own line will be a green one. But the one that you suggest, Million, will put him on a red line. So in this situation, the boss, guess what? He will favor my decision. And then we'll go to you, Million, and say, hey, we do this. What is this? Command and control. This is my explanation of why we see command and control. And I don't buy the agile narrative that command and control is due to the persistence of a Tayloristic mindset. And in fact, the counter proof there is now how many agile initiatives are able to affect that decision-making process by trying to replace that mindset. So if we now go back to what we did on the previous slide and we evolve the mental model, what we would see happening is that this option disappears because the decisions that I and you make are consistent. They all go in the same direction, and both of us would gain the approval of the boss. So both of our plans would proceed. And you see, in all these cases, we have reasoned only on the self-interest of the three individuals we are showing here. But since the top guy is the one responsible for the profits of the company, at the end, this will produce real bottom line results. And finally, and then we'll take a break. And finally, this model, you see, it's working for me, and maybe I'm the most junior hire of the company. It's working for you. You maybe are a senior executive, and it's working for the supreme boss. So this way of reasoning is a scale-free solution. It works at all levels. Okay, this was just...
Could I ask a question, Steve? In my mind, and maybe I'm just blurring the metaphor here, but it feels like this is an awful lot like goal alignment in a large organization where, you set a large level goal and people are making sure all of the work they're doing is aligned, which, frankly gets pretty hokey pretty fast. So can you talk about how that differs? And maybe I'm just being simplistic, but in my mind, they seem to be related.
Well, it is related, and it's not coincidental that I mentioned at the beginning that TameFlow nowadays is mostly known not for its root in pattern languages and pattern theory, but for the combination of Kanban and theory of constraints. And as you presumably know, theory of constraints is known for that business novel of Dr. Goldratt, which was called The Goal. And this is the transposition of that kind of thinking, but interpreted through the lens of patterns. So why are we looking at time and money? I know, now what Milton said before, we might have more noble purposes in life than mere money. But the fact is that nothing except time and money can be taken as the minimum common denominator of all people involved in an organization. Which also brings me to reflect on another element. I have not prepared any drawings or slides of that, but it's this notion of values and principles, which in principle, pardon the play on words, is a noble proposition. We all want to be part of an organization that has values and principles that resonate with ours. And I say at this point that values and principles are so important that they should not be defined by a manifesto or a method or a framework or a process. Values and principles should emerge from the organization itself and should be nurtured by the people in the organization. And therefore, having like this minimum commonality on top of which you build anything else is consistent with a pattern thinking. Because with these foundational patterns, which I call the unity of purpose and the community of trust, you will generate, patterns are generative, you will generate the values and principles which are good for your context, for your particular situation, for that social body of people that your company is, that come together every day and they bring forward the company, yes, by doing work, but before doing work, they make decisions. And it's those decisions that are so fundamental that I decided they should be the center of all, well, thinking we do around this. So thank you for that question, Audrey. I have come to a break point here. I have more to give like an overview of what TameFlow is, but I see also time is running out. So Million, who would you like to proceed now?
So I think as far as time, typically these are an hour and an hour 10 minutes. So we have about 10 more minutes. So I think it would be good to open it up for questions, or maybe if anybody had any aha moments or questions on this. I had a couple of things that, definitely kind of trigger a couple of thoughts in my head. But is there anybody else that would like to ask Steve a question? Or
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I'm in New York City, New Jersey area. I want to make sure I heard something right. Did you say that Agile promotes command and control?
No, it's the Agile narrative, the story that Agile tells, that command and control derives from obsolete management models that are inspired by Taylor. So it's the Tayloristic heritage of command and control. I contest that that is not the case, and it's being concerned about that is missing the mark. It's like, you know, metaphorically barking up the wrong tree. You can bark as much as you wish, but the cat is not on that tree. It's on another tree, and that I think is something important to bring to the attention of the Agile community, that concern about obsolete Tayloristic management methods is really not the cause of command and control.
Or that the command and control is bad. I think we also have Erkan here. He just joined us, but you know, him and I had conversation that we've gone to one extreme where, you know, waterfall is bad and Agile is good. Like, you know, that's another extreme where at least Erkan and I have had conversations where it's not necessarily true. It's not that black and white, you know, in a sense. So,
no, it's always like contextual. So you have to look at the context, and in certain situations, what is good can become bad, and vice versa. And that is the power of a patterns-based approach, because you can recognize the different contexts and even apply different solutions to the same context.
Right. I feel like, so maybe I'm just not understanding, but Agile is at its heart about shifting, and like I think any organization that would just go in and apply the manifesto blindly across, well, that's of course going to fail. I mean, so I feel like, and I've never encountered a company that has just said, this is how we're doing it. And it's always been they take the manifesto and that's like their launch pad. And then the teams find the values and principles that you were talking about on their own. But it's kind of all launched from that, right?
Yes, I mean, all manifestos are inspirational.
Yeah.
They give you like a broad stroke of what the good picture should be like, but then you have to fill in the colors, so to say.
Right.
So it needs that active interpretation and even participative action between all the folks. But that does not go away with the mental models. So you can consider mental models as being inspirational as well, but they are also much more I don't know the right term, we could say actionable. So that the
But wouldn't the team discuss that in a retro and say, you know what, that wasn't, you know, our mental model was that we thought that was an alligator. It turns out it was a log. Like, I think I'm maybe I've just been in like real hippy dippy companies that, like, you know, us Americans were crazy. I mean, literally. So I think I'm missing something that maybe isn't how Agile is kind of practiced in New York in this large city. It is by no means prescriptive or literal. It is a philosophy. It is a spirit that guides you through meetings and through process and through, you know, are we scaling? Are we going to do scaled agile? Are we going to do less? That like it, there's all these other avenues of it, but at its heart, it's, I feel like companies are like, we're agile, which means we are going to pivot. We are going to make changes and we are going to figure out what works for us. And it does start at a team level. So are you talking about companies that just blindly go in and say, here's a piece of paper, it is our manifesto, we are doing this by the book?
No, obviously that's not the criticism. The criticism about the manifesto is that that it does induce that divide, which I tried to illustrate at the beginning in a provocative way. And that divide, you know, the anti-management culture is pervasive in Agile. Of course, in these last few years, it has been like taken down. Why? Precisely because Agile has started to scale. They are trying to reach like the outside of the team and get to the larger scope of the organization, and therefore the need is to involve managers, right?
Yeah.
When you say induces divide, it's anti-management. Can you paint that in a real picture of a corporate setting?
Absolutely. So you need to know one point that is central to TameFlow is to focus on the needs of people, and the example here were like the fundamental needs, but we can get to more specific needs. Managers at the top, they need to make decisions all the time, and in order to make decisions, they need to have some indication of what is happening in the various units. Now, Agile is presenting methods to like represent and reason about progress, which are not consistent with what managers need. So when you hear someone, for instance, talking about story points estimation and all things related to that, it becomes like a black box for managers. Managers need to reason in numeric terms. There is no choice. Why? Because the various organizational units have such a diversity of skills, knowledge, competencies that it would be impossible for a manager to master all of those detailed knowledges, and that's why also there is the process of delegation. And therefore, if a manager has to make a decision at the top level, the only language that works for managers is money and time. There is nothing else. There's nothing else that can work.
Oh no, I
so
read it. You're totally speaking my language with like story points. You can't put that into a CapEx budget and expect accountants to go, rock on, we're going to do this many story points. Like totally get it. Yeah, I'm going to be quiet. I might email you later. You've made me think a lot, and so I apologize. I'm gonna put her on mute, and thank you.
Before we finish, so in a way, I just gave you a teaser of what TameFlow is, but I'd like to also make this more accessible. As you know, I've written a book. It's Tame Your Workflow, written with Daniel Duarong, who's based in Canada. And it is specific for, let's say, what I call the PEST environment, which means that you have a multitude of projects or products, you have multiple events or deadlines, multiple stakeholders, and the multiple teams. TameFlow has proven on the field to scale pretty well. I've dealt with organizations with thousands of people, hundreds of teams, and workloads that were quantified in 70,000 change requests per month. And the way I did it is documented in this book. And I'm putting up here a special offer for you guys here on the Agile Maine meetup. You will find it there on tameflow.com/special offer. I should also mention that that we have a community. So if you want to talk to other people in the TameFlow sphere, just go to community.tameflow.com and you will find many others there. So TameFlow is not only me. It's there are many other people who are using TameFlow, even though it might not be known. And I have used TameFlow in all sorts of teams and settings. In particular, I've been helping Kanban and Scrum teams, which, mind you, were not challenge teams. They were teams that were working at, by the book. They were doing Kanban and Scrum as best could, and yet they needed more. Another thing that is not known with this, and RadTac in the UK, we won the UK Agile Awards in 2014, and a lot of that was actually TameFlow in the background. But I guess we're running out of time. Miljan.
I know it's never enough, and maybe we can schedule a follow-up, or we haven't really dig into TameFlow. And again, I was attracted to it just running into that idea and what Steve had at that time, and this is like maybe four years ago or so. I would love to maybe when we do a deep dive into TameFlow or something, along the line where people would like to explore this more with. But I actually published it today article on like why it's important for us to be chefs rather than cooks, in the sense like there are so many frameworks out there telling us, hey, here's Scrum, here's Safe, here's this, right? But like we're not making enough, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's not enough people that understand patterns and understand how to create their own frameworks or whatever you want to call them, but adjust them to their own context, to their own shared purpose that Steve mentioned earlier. So what I'm seeing is that we need more chefs. We need more people to understand these things. And I think TameFlow is one way to look at patterns and say, how do I create something that's custom, but that works in my environment? So, but thank you, Steve. Thank you very much I know it's late in Europe too. I know there are several people joining us from Europe, which is...
I'd have a suggestion, Miljan, because now TameFlow might be very abstract. So to all those looking at the show here, if we're going to have a follow-up, why don't you collect like challenges that the audience experience every day on their work, in their profession, and then we just do an open session, and I will try to tackle those questions and tell in TameFlow I would do it this way or that way, and then we can compare cards.
That would be good, and maybe it's more of like a working session, and I think we could do that. I'll look at maybe sometime in December, early December. We could do something like that, and I'll work with you, Steve, and we can figure out, and we'll see whoever shows up. But I think that would be really cool, and I know I will be interested in doing that. So.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, and I know we have Brock and Erkan here, and it's related to this topic of Agile Manifesto. So maybe we could have Brock, and I'll talk to Brock and Erkan on coming, maybe you presenting your ideas here as well, and what your thoughts are on Manifesto or Agile. I'm trying to bring people with different perspectives. As you see, like each of these sessions is kind of completely different. with different. And sometimes I also try to bring people that push kind of traditional thinking, or at least right now, what has become traditional thinking. So let me know if you also have any ideas for other topics, and I'll try to line up some other. Joe Justice, okay, I'll try. I'll try to reach out to Joe and see if he would be open to come in. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Steve, again, thank you. Thank you for those of you that joined us from Europe. It's close to midnight or after midnight, I believe. So thank you very much. And this session was recorded, so I'll upload it to the Agile Maine YouTube channel and send the link to people that register for this. So
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks, man.
Bye.